Welcome to the Decathlon episode 10 of... Oh, I forgot where we were.
It's already starting. Decathlon.
Yeah, 10 Deca means 10.
I know.
Episode 10 of Savage Discourse.
Woo.
Thanks. You dropped the ball on that one.
Get off your throne.
You haven't seen me start an
We're
episode.
13 seconds in.
You haven't seen me start an episode atop me throne.
Yeah, it's normally a gradual build-up. It normally takes about 30 seconds.
Usually there's like an escalator of topics, but this time I could not help but start. It's like I spawned at the top.
All right.
Well, now that I'm back with the common folk,
With the peasants.
Welcome to episode 10. This is a special episode because it's something that's really terrifying to John specifically, which is social media. It's that episode 10's about social media.
Yeah.
Social media.
I know.
I'm John.
I'm Kyle.
And we're talking about social media.
Social media.
If you joined us last week, we talked about what the bleep is nostalgia. And I'm going to be honest, the way that this week has been going makes me nostalgic for last week.
Yeah.
You know,
Good memories about that podcast.
things were better. Things were different then.
Mm-hmm.
Things felt different.
Things felt right.
Things felt, I'll say it. They felt good. I forgot what that felt like.
What's been going on this week?
Social media.
Oh.
So I'm being dramatic for comedic effect or just effect if it's not comedic. And, social media is something that I personally, well, before we jump into the meat and potatoes, let's skirt around the lettuce for a little bit. How are you doing, Kyle?
I'm good.
You good?
Yeah.
How's your week going?
It's good.
All right. So you gotta give me something.
Well, I mean, let's see. This week, I slept a lot. When I wake up, I normally take a nap.
Sound like you're gainfully employed.
Oh no, not at all.
No.
No, it's been fun.
No. Yeah, we actually, for those of you who have followed us from the beginning, and for those of you who are joining us, we do have an episode about how to survive during the C-word times. There's only one word in the English language that is referred to as the C-word, so that still holds, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We do have an episode about that. It's episode 1 called Wellness and Isolation, and Kyle and I kind of go through our tips for how to survive and thrive in moments where you're out of control and things are kind of crazy. So
yeah, sleeping and taking a lot of naps really is.
So actually, Kyle's employing all of his current coping strategies.
Yeah,
which is good. It's good to be coped up.
COVID-19.
Man, I'm so coped up. I can't even. My heart is just. I'm experiencing arrhythmia because I'm so coped up. So yeah, welcome. This week we're going to talk about social media. So I actually was the impetus I was the reason that we decided to talk about social media. I've actually recently seen 2 amazing documentaries that are both on the flicks right now. You see how trendy I made it?
Very.
The flicks.
The flicks.
Yeah. You don't get that kind of flips from the tube. No, it's the flicks.
I prefer the tube.
The tube?
Yeah.
There's a lot of tubes. You got your, of course, your red tube and then your YouTube and some other varieties of tube.
The Lou's good.
The Lou tube?
No, Hulu.
Oh, the Lou?
The Lou.
So those are video streaming platforms, but this week we're talking specifically about social media as it pertains to human interaction and kind of the behind the scenes, the system, the mechanics, the reason it's created, the algorithms, and kind of the to extrapolate that the influence it's had on our lives and the lives of other people. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I watched 2 documentaries. One of them is called The Great Hack, which is about it's about an individual who wanted his private data from Facebook and it follows him and several other people up until the presidential election of 2016. And the second one is called The Social Dilemma, which just came out. And I'm pretty torn on it because 50% of it is this they have all these crazy top high-end tech experts and designers and people that work for Facebook and Google and Twitter and Snapchat. And then they have this entirely this fabricated family drama narrative that's like where they're like they'll talk about a concept and then they'll pan over to this family and it's kind of like a slap on the knee, like, oh, it's a family drama, like you would see on like the break. Yeah, so they have like it's basically incorporating like this family that they're trying to make a point about. Oh, the family's struggling too. They want the kids to use the phone less. They don't want them to use them at the table.
Yeah.
So it's like you have this incredibly like. This incredibly poignant, like, brain teasing information, and then the other side you have this family that's like there's like almost like it's missing a laugh track, but you could see how it would be in there.
Ugh.
Yeah,
it's really it's like a sitcom with a really good documentary.
Yeah, no, it's called a docu narrative, or it's like the way that it's advertised in the byline on the Netflix. It's really funny.
Ugh.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be such a big deal, but the further I got into it, you have all this incredible information, and then you have this family that's dealing with their rebellious kids who are trying to who are on their phones too much. And they also kind of play into this radicalization that can happen. There's another, and I'll talk about that documentary as well. It's called Ghost of Sugarland. It's a 20-minute indie documentary, but it's about how a friend of these individuals in Texas who are Muslim, how he joins them and eventually becomes radicalized and actually leaves the United States to go do it. It's a 20-minute indie documentary, The Ghost of Sugarland on Netflix. It's really good. But yeah, and there's also anyway, the reason I brought that up is that in the moral dilemma, there is kind of like this, like they use this big shadowy group called the EC, or like the extremist content or something like that, or this extreme I don't know, it's EC, and then like how he goes to, he ends this kid absolutely, was walking home and ends up in these rallies and gets attacked, gets arrested by the cops just because. Anyway, and there's also another part of the movie that's kind of silly is they have these 3 homunculi in like the phone where they're like playing the parts of like the algorithm that are like, we need this boy to where his engagement levels are down. Let's send him a picture of his ex-girlfriend. Oh, sending now. And then it shows him and it goes up on the screen and it's like his engagement rose 20%. That's excellent. And then it's like these 3 dudes who all look the same. And it's like this just unnecessary hyperbolic over dramatization. Which I guess some people could be helpful to understand, but
I guess
anyway,
it sounds
I'm going
like half the movie could be cut out and it'd be a lot better.
I would agree. Yes, and so the great hack is like 90% exposition about Cambridge Analytica and in the political race and the data driven metrics they use and all the way that happens. And there's like a little bit of personal story, but it's all real. Like it's actual people and they're talking about things. Whereas this one is like you have all these real people talking about this incredibly real stuff, and then you have this BS family that's anyway. Yeah. I'm sure maybe that helps make it more. And I think I read an article about it, and they said they chose to do that because it applies to a larger, more general population. But I think that you kind of are like losing the baby in the bathwater by diluting it with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for people that don't really know what like algorithms are and how all this stuff works under the hood, when they're talking about it, it's easier to kind of stick.
Yeah, well, like somebody who just tunes in is like, oh, look at the technology's effect on this modern family.
Yeah,
even though it's like really silly.
Yeah.
So
Great
anyway,
Hack's really good though. I've seen that.
Oh yeah, Kyle is actually the one who turned me on to the GH.
Yeah,
I'm making it cool.
Mm.
The
the guh.
The guh.
You watch guh on the flicks.
Oh, I flicks my guh. Not in public any though.
That's
not
good.
Anymore.
Not since the arrest.
Not since the arrest that I'm not at liberty to talk about, Kyle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyway, I'm just kidding. Kyle is due, hopefully. Unless I'm unaware of my criminal past. So that's why this week we want to talk about social media. So let's go ahead and jump on in since we've already got the beginning. We've already laid the. So what is social media, Kyle?
Social media.
Yeah. What is that? What is S&M?
S&M.
What's S&M, Kyle? There's no other acronyms or no other initializations that contain that.
No, man. S&M is like a platform where people upload their pictures and things about life, and their friends like it, and it's really dumb.
I didn't expect you to go in on it so quickly.
Yeah, I don't like it.
You give the explanation, you're like, and it sucks, and it's bad for you. That's your inner George Carlin speaking out against the dystopian surveillance capitalism we live in.
Yeah, he's in there.
I love George Carlin. We should do an episode on George Carlin.
Okay.
Cool. I'm going to write that down.
You want to just turn this one into that?
No. No, he needs. I need to do research, make sure that I do him justice. I actually saw him before he passed away.
At like a comedy thing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It was when I was 15 years old in high school. My parents took me there. Might be where I get my cynicism and what's it called? Whenever you don't like misanthropy, whenever you don't like people, misanthropy and cynicism.
That could have done it. It's a pretty influential time.
Yeah,
he's a pretty influential person.
He is. So anyway, that is so. So yeah, so I would agree. It's so social media is any type of medium where individuals comment, where there's an exchange of ideas, where people communicate, and it has there's social media for every variety of human experience. You have your dating social media. You have your generic social media. I don't know what the nomenclature.
There's two genres. There's dating and non-dating.
Thank you, Kyle. That really makes this a lot easier to talk about. So you got in your dating, you have anything from I'm sure anyone out there listening has probably heard of. You got your Tinder, your Bumble, your Coffee Meets Croissant. I think it should be called that. They missed an opportunity for it because it's very phallic. And you have, what else is there? Like Match, Plenty of Fish, Hinge. Oh yeah, Hinge is like the new Hinge is now what Tinder was always supposed to be, or maybe used to be.
You got Grindr.
Grindr, that's good. Had a lot of good time on Grindr.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are all examples of dating, of romantic dating, where people come together for a common purpose. Okay, so then on the other half of that, we'll just split it down the middle of that Venn diagram that doesn't overlap. On the right wide, you have, who am I? Oh, what is the big one that everyone, MySpace. You have MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace.
You have LiveJournal. LinkedIn.
Never heard of LiveJournal.
You never heard of LiveJournal?
No.
LiveJournal was like the bridge in like the early 2000s between MySpace edginess and whatever that other one is now. I can't remember that everyone uses.
Zuckerbook?
I think this thing's called like Nose Novel. Something like that.
That's what it is.
Then you of course have your like subsidiaries. You have like Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, all these. Have you guys heard of those? Have you heard of those, Kyle?
I've heard a couple of those.
Yeah, you maybe heard of a few of those. Maybe even used them every now and then.
Yeah, I've got a Facebook.
We're getting there. We're not there yet.
What? No, I mean a personal Facebook.
Don't talk about it yet. We're not there yet.
I can't talk about my personal Facebook.
It's not. You can. I'm just kidding. So that's what social media. It's any platform digitally. I'm trying to think of like an analog social media. What would social media be before the internet? Like going to like a community outing, like going to church, going to like a youth group. Like
I don't know. I don't think that's social media.
Is that like? Do you think that's a new? Maybe we should have looked up like the history of social media, but I think it's a relatively like very new invention.
Yeah,
like,
it's with the internet.
Decades. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm trying to think of like what would bring people together and like distribute information and like ideas. Like,
well, then yeah, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, like. So yeah, I'm thinking that I can't think. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe if please feel free to correct us in the comments and give us information if you have it. So we're talking exclusively about the new modern social media. Like I think back in the day, like pamphlets that were passed around in books and everything, and that
like TV.
That TV. Oh, that makes. Oh my God. We do have a TV.
We did.
TV is a form of social media,
yeah.
But it doesn't have the same interactability that obviously the internet everything does.
Mm-hmm.
And the radio.
Yeah.
Radio, it's coming to us.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive. It's
yeah.
coming to us. Thanks, mind and universe. So we're talking uniquely about the entrenched level, the ubiquitous social media that has now pervaded every second of our lives now. So let's talk, now that we've talked about what social media is and all the different types that we could think of, which I'm sure there's more. Like Craigslist is technically social media. I mean, to a degree, not in the same sense we're talking, but people can respond to things and there's like a community. So, I mean, I guess there's like, all these different varieties, but okay. Yeah. We're talking about the social with a capital S. So, Kyle, let's talk about your history with social media. Like, which ones have you had, and what's your experience been? When did you start dosing yourself up with the sweet rush of social media?
I think my first one was MySpace, and I honestly liked it a lot more for the coding than actually the social
Oh my God,
aspect.
you just jogged me. Yes, because you could copy HTML scripts and put them on your page. You can have like the fancy Tasmanian Devil and Tweety Bird logos and everything.
Yeah, I love that shit.
Oh God, dude, that was so okay. So what else?
Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram, and that's it.
That's it?
Yep, I think I've posted one picture on Instagram, and I think I averaged one.
What's that picture of?
It was you and me actually. It was when I was rock climbing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you laid under me, and I was about to fall on you. You remember
Oh, I do. I remember that.
that? And then
That's your sole contribution to Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is so. Thank you, Kyle. That's
Yeah,
so
I had to
sweet.
put that out there.
That's wonderful.
And then I share a meme. I think like once a year on Facebook.
Your annual meme.
Yeah.
It's your gift to the world.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's it for me.
that's it.
Yeah.
You've never been on a dating app.
Nope.
You've never swiped. You've never been swipey.
I have not.
Wow. You are really like a rare man.
Yeah, I know.
Ladies out there, this man has never been on social media. I'm sorry. Ladies, this man has never been on dating apps. That's
Yeah.
incredible. I feel like that makes you like a diamond.
You think so?
Actually, I think it makes you like platinum or like what's better than diamond?
I don't know. I'll take a diamond
Platinum.
though.
You'll take a diamond.
I'll take
Platinum.
diamond.
This is a platinum man. You know how it's like they say like if you're a gold star or like gay, you've never had sex with a woman, like you've only had sex with men.
I did not
You're
know
like-
they said that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, I lived with a gay couple for several years. I learned a little bits of the culture. And you're like a gold star man because you've never been on a dating app.
Nice.
That's cool.
I'll
Sorry.
put that on my Tinder profile.
Put that put that on your resume. And after I see that you have many years of coding experience and you're a gold star man, you've never been on a dating app.
Not one swipe.
Wow. Well, we won't have to worry HR about you. You won't need the harassment seminars. That's incredible. Okay, so that's it.
Yep.
Let's see. I was on MySpace when I was a lad. When I was a wee little
Which are
boy.
way little boy.
That's when my inner Cain comes out whenever I talk about my past. Like hey, when I was a
You have
wee
to throw in a wee little boy.
when I was but a lad. And I had MySpace, and because everyone was going to it, and back then I was in my emo gothic years in my phase, and all my friends were into that. And so what I was really attracted to for MySpace was the music. Like you could embed like music in your in your thing, and you could do that super dope HTML coding you're talking about, where you go to a website that were like really crappy 2000s, websites that are just vertical and nothing was stylized or mobilized or anything or made for mobile. And you would scroll down and you would find like what you're looking for. And then you would copy that and go to your MySpace, and then it would tell you there's tutorials for how to do that. Mm-hmm. And I used to do that, and I thought that was so cool. And so I had the MySpace, and I had Tom was still my number one because like he's just such a cool dude.
Dude, yeah, I kept Tom up there because I was afraid to betray him. I thought he was gonna come after me.
You thought the MySpace would be like, we couldn't help but notice that Tom is not in your top 10.
Our Lord Tom.
No, what's wrong? Are you okay? What's
Yeah.
wrong with Tom? And so I did MySpace, and I went through several iterations of that. Like the first one was more punky. Then the very last one, which I'm really hoping the internet has swept away with time, is me, like where everything's like blood and gothic and emo. And I'm pretty sure that the opening lines to my MySpace is "Welcome to my lair."
Oh my!
I'm
God.
pretty. It's cringy. It's
That's
real
so
bad.
edgy.
It's real
I
bad.
guarantee it's still up there.
Oh, out there in the universe.
MySpace is still a thing.
It is.
Isn't
But
it?
it's more like it's a music server now. It's like more for like music and bands.
Really.
Mm-hmm. It's more for band promotion now, I believe. But so I did that, and I actually started a live journal for a little bit, which was kind of like the bridge between MySpace and Facebook. And so I had and basically what you would do is you would just go on there and you would upload post. Like it was kind of like the
So it's like a
proto
blogging thing.
Yeah, exactly. That is what it was. But I think it was like blogging before it was called Blogger. Maybe it was soon after that. I was still like in my teens, like maybe early 20s. I don't really remember exactly. But I went on there and posted a little bit, and that's where everyone would like, especially the artsy, the misunderstoods, the intellectuals would go and write their pages and be like, "Hey, have you followed me on LiveJournal?" And I was always like, "Well, you don't want to see mine." So I did that for a little bit, very short, like less than like a few months, and then I made the jump to the big ol' I don't even want to say it.
Facebook.
And I moved over to Facebook, and this was back in like when Facebook was still very new, and it was like the most interactive thing you could do on there was play fish games, like fishbowl farming games, like Farmville, back when that happened.
Oh, really?
And you could wave at people.
Wow.
That's it. Like you could still like and comment and everything, but it did not. I don't even remember there being ads on it back then. Like I felt like it was just like this scrolling page where you just looked at everyone's uploading and all their internal thoughts and the things that are going on in their lives for better or worse, and you could just wave or poke them, I think, and then you could like, that was it. Like that was all Facebook was. And back then it made sense to me. I thought it was like, it was really neat, and for the purpose it was designed for back then, I think. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe with the new information I have now, maybe it's always been maligned or a little bit more malignant than it seems on the surface, but I kind of, I used it and I got really into it, and I, had everything uploaded there like everybody else. And let's see, in terms of like ancillary, like sub apps, I had a Snapchat, and I never had a Twitter.
Yeah, me neither.
Don't think that highly of myself to have a Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like LiveJournal, just like 140 characters.
It's like you're writing a book one word at a time, and it's the most disjointed schizophrenic book. And it's
kind of perfect for a certain president.
For certain people of presidential status. And I never had a Instagram. Didn't like myself enough to have that. Thought that I would just be, I didn't want to see my ugly mug and my belly on there. Wasn't, didn't have any reason. Like I thought, I got my memes through. Yeah, so I was a Redditor. I had Imager. I had in terms of dating profiles, Tinder, Bumble, and Match.com, which is a whole other story.
Is Match.com considered social media?
Well, in terms of like dating social media, I would say so. Like people come together for a purpose. You can communicate with people. Absolutely. Maybe like social media light, or maybe like focus social media, because it's on one particular aspect, which is like finding your next person to smush.
Yes.
For live. And I will tell you, with my experience on why am I calling it I want to call it like Matchbox 21, which is a band. The Match.com, it was a premium service. You had to pay some money for it. And I will say, like, if you're looking to get serious, like, Match is kind of I would say it's where to go if you're thinking of looking into it.
Had some success.
Yeah. Really, it ended tragically, but like, yeah.
That's not Match's fault though. Match did what they were supposed to do.
No. Match. The algorithms they have, like, it made say they did what they were supposed to do. It was me. It was in the hands of the user where the error occurred.
Now they need a follow-up site called Sustain.
We've made the match. Now we'll help you keep you'll keep your marriage together.
How are things?
Dude, Kyle, that's smart.
Yeah.
That's a idea right there.
Boom.
Have like, we're not going to hook you up. We're going to help you make it last.
Just the whole process.
Oh yeah, man. Well, I think there's also a thing for that called marriage counseling, but this would be a digital, very impersonal, like fly-by-night kind of thing.
Yeah.
For a $5 premium, you can have a complete AI computer dictate what you should do.
Yeah, I think people are more into that now anyway.
Yeah, which is where we're going with all this.
Yeah.
So, I think that's kind of the extent of my social media. I can't remember. I can't not talk about FetLife. So, for those of you who don't know, FetLife stands for Fetish Life. And it is a social media online that's kind of like the Facebook for people with kinks. And so people would come on there, and it would basically be like, and I got you to say S&M earlier as a joke to set me up for this one. No, that just happened. But S&M and BDSM and, people... when I was younger, I, was really into that counterculture. And so I never hooked up or actually found any, I just kind of looked on there to see all the craziness and all the, the people on there. And not that anyone on there is crazy, but just kind of the intensity and the variety of human experience and relationships there. And I had some friends that were really on there, but I just thought it was interesting. So I did have that too, but I didn't have any pictures uploaded or anything. So,
Didn't have it linked to your cringy MySpace.
No.
That would have been a good combo.
You know what I should do is go back and put my LinkedIn on there. On my FetLife.
You should.
I'm a professional freak. In the sexy way.
Is Reddit a social media?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's nothing but social. It's forums upon forums. Upon
well,
forums.
then I use social media all the time. Then
Do you contribute or do you just lurk?
I lurk.
Oh, you know what else I was on? I used to be on 4chan and 420chan for obvious reasons. And of course, you have all the sister sites like 8chan and some of the ones that I've never even heard of. But so that's my experience. And back then, especially when I was in college, and college was when I was in the big Facebook and the Reddit and 420chan and Imager and everything. Yeah, that was my experience, and I guess that kind of leads us into the next avenue here, which is my indictment of social media.
What you've learned.
What I've learned, and so I don't know when it happened. I don't know when I started realizing that everything that was happening on Facebook and all of other social media sites just left me with a feeling of like having like a diet soda. Like you drink you drink it and it has the allure, like the facade of being like a genuine thing, and then it's like you're just left with emptiness and gas.
Yeah.
And the problem is that if we were just talking about like food or like, whatever, like it wouldn't be a problem. But this is, something that's integral to our humanity, which is socialization.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel every time I would go on Facebook or anything else, I would like things. And I realized, and not what the research shows, that, people feel more isolated and more depressed and have a lot more anxiety the more time they spend on those sites. Because this is before like the ads and like all the craziness that's on there now. But I just felt it just felt fake. Like, I guess is the way to say it. Like, it felt unreal. And when I saw like the articles start coming out like a decade ago or so, about, like, oh, people are more depressed and, people have more friends on Facebook than they do in real life. And, it just felt like the interactions I was having, in the limited, not that it was unlimited because you can engage textually, you could send videos, you can like, comment and, pictures, but like all of that is just kind of like an artifice of human interaction. Like, that's not me sitting on the couch like I am with you now and looking at you and watching your body language and watching your response to me and anything. And so I guess what I'm saying, like indictment, I want to put a big disclaimer on the front of it because there are people that use it for good reasons. Like there's people on there that are not the people behind the scenes marketing, but are on the front end marketing, like people trying to get their photo business off the ground, people trying to get a podcast off the ground, people trying to, they're just out there using an open social media that has since become commercialized to advocate for their own passion projects and their stuff. And I think that's okay. And like my parents, like my mom is in her 60s, my dad is in his 70s. They use it to check on people who probably aren't even alive anymore. Like they go to remind these people. They look at pictures of these people. They go on there to keep up with aunts, estranged family members that they haven't seen for forever. And I think that in the new age, like the age we're in now, which we're going to get into about kind of the, which I don't want to use, the word they use, surveillance capitalism, is the word from Social Dilemma. Oh. It's the word, and there's a book on it that was written by an economist, and they kind of borrowed that from her. And, I can see where that, I don't want to say that like a buzz or like a sensationalist word, but like the kind of era that we live in now where we're all connected and everything is every single micron of your action and behavior online is coded and recorded and stored and sold to somebody, which is not even what I have a problem with. That's not even what I have my issue with, but yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. When I first got into it, I don't even remember how it started. I think I was kind of just peer pressured into it because I was tired of people asking me what my Facebook was.
Oh, yeah, that's why I got on there, too. Yeah, I didn't want to.
I just didn't want to explain to every single person why I think social media is dumb, so I just made one.
Just to be like, fine, okay,
yeah,
here it is.
Like, I'm on there.
I think my first picture that I had on there is kind of like the same, like, F you to the people who wanted me to, was like a picture of a hedgehog. Like, it was something that was just like, it's not even me.
Dude, do you watch Squidbillies?
Yeah.
You know Dan Halen?
Is he the big like porcupine guy?
Yeah, that was my first picture. That was my profile picture for like a year.
Oh, that's amazing. We were Porky Brothers.
Yeah, dude, way back then before we even knew each other.
Before we even knew each other.
Dude.
Yeah, that's so funny. I didn't even think about that. That is exactly the reason I did, because I was still on MySpace. And when I was in a freshman in undergrad, when all that was blowing up in like 2007, 2008, when it was starting to get big in the late 2000s, like I was like, I don't need a Facebook. Like I don't care. People, and even back then I was really turned off by like, so the thing that I have said multiple times to you and a lot of other people, anyone who will listen, is like, whenever you have a dialogue with someone face to face, there's a filter. There is like, now I know you know me, you know that I don't necessarily like I say really sensational, shocky things, but like whenever we're talking to people face to face, there's a different interaction. There's a filter that our body goes through to give the language and to refine what we say, and we think about what we say based on the audience, because like I wouldn't say things to you that I'd say to my parents. I wouldn't say things to my parents that I say to you, and so on. That's called, actually in behavior analysis, that's called audience control. And people on the internet don't seem to do that anymore, especially on Facebook. And even back then, I was seeing these inner thoughts of people that just seemed not even like inappropriate or anything. I was just kind of like malaise, like unhappiness that's like, okay, but we all feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you had a bad day, but that's it. I'm going to give you a like. What does that mean? What does that do? What, like the intangibility of the interaction, like what does that even mean for you? Like what does that mean for me to give you a like? Like I'm acknowledging you, like I'm schadenfreude, I enjoy your suffering. Like down thumb, like boo because I hate you, or boo because I don't like the way you feel. Like it's so... And if you comment like most in anyway, and so even back then, and again, I know I'm a little bit neurotic about it, but even back then, like I saw how artificial that felt. Like I saw how like people were monopolizing I don't even want to say monopolizing, because I don't know if we talked about this, like the research that shows that we are only supposed to be able to know and remember like 10,000 people. Like that's supposed to be our social network.
10,000?
Have you heard that number?
That seems like a lot.
It is, but that's like what our brain, the brain that hasn't evolved in several thousand years, like that's where our common, like that's like the maximum number of people that we are programmed biologically to know how to
like meet.
Yeah, to know how to meet, to know how to interact with, to know how to like maintain kinship and like tribalism with.
Interesting. I honestly would have thought it'd be a lot lower.
I would too.
I mean, back then the human population, or whatever we were when our brains evolved to that level, the population wasn't even 10,000. I'm sure.
Well, and if it was, it was. But even if it wasn't, like we were in small enough tribes that like that we were a fraction of that number. So so anyway, I heard that on one of the documentaries and The Social Dilemma, and I've also heard it in another book by Robert Ornstein called The Evolution of Consciousness, but. So anyway, like, and so even back then I saw that like all of this feels so it just didn't feel real. And it felt really like, and not only did it not feel real, you saw all these people like, going around and investing all of this time, all this energy into something that like literally, in the beginning it was like, oh, I'm going to check my Facebook right after class and that's it. And then I'll do it tomorrow. It went from like a frequency of once per day for like a minute or two to like everyone all day, every day scrolling. Nothing else, no hobbies, no activities. Like, I remember dating at that time, and, I could be wrong, I could be misremembering, but I remember talking to my brother about this, because he and I see very similarly in a lot of things. And he and I kept saying, a lot of the women and a lot of the people, or, whoever we were talking to, didn't really seem to have a lot of hobbies. Like maybe it was the area we lived in, maybe it was just, but it just seemed like people just don't know how to interact socially, or they were just, they would just sit and scroll.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all they had. That's all they had. That and Netflix. So anyway, that's kind of those are. So anyway, my initial disclaimer is that I understand that there is good intention and it's still embedded in that, like it's still woven into that fiber. But there's so many layers on top and around and beneath that have been created by world-class engineers and designers and architects to. Really, the whole point of The Social Dilemma, the beginning point they make is how addictive it is.
Yeah, it's addictive by design.
It is. And they talk about, and the thing that's really amazing, you have all these top designers that aren't just like people that know people. They are the people that created those systems. And they talk about it. And they talk about how, one of the guys, and the reason that he left Google was he was going in there. And this is in the documentary, they talk about the Gmail app, and he was one of the designers on there. And they talk about how, they spent all this time talking about how should the inbox look? What color should it be? How should it look when you click on it? And he was like, And he was realizing he was spending all this time out of work. You know, he says, you know, it became the old irony, you know, I went to work on this thing, and then I was enslaved to it, you know, every other second that I wasn't there. And he said, you know, he looked up and he's like, you know what, are we, you know, he asked the only question that no one else seemed to be asking, which is, should we, you know, should we be doing this? Like, is there, you know, should we be creating a product like this that is so addictive to people?
Gmail?
Yeah. Now that's specifically just Gmail. That's one example.
I wouldn't think of Gmail as being addictive.
Well, think about when the smartphones released, like God, when did they start getting big? Like 10, 15 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Like in the 2000s. Like I didn't even have a smartphone until like my junior or senior year of undergrad, which is like 2010, 2011.
Yeah, I had a flip phone for most of high school.
Which is crazy because we're one of the last generations that lived in, well, every generation is a transitional technology period, but like we went from like analog to like everything digital.
Yeah.
Because I'm 31 and you, how old are you, Kyle?
28.
Let me just write that down. 28 years old. What's your favorite thing in the world?
The year 28.
I'm setting you up. I'm setting you up for a dating profile. The year 28.
The year 28 specifically.
What's your favorite thing? I like numbers.
There's a lot going on back then. 28 BC specifically.
Pre-man. So
pre-man.
Pre-man.
Pre-one man.
Pre-one man. That's very true. That's a whole other conversation because it used to be called before Domini or like after Domini. No, it was called. Never mind.
Yeah, always confused me.
BC and AC. It used to be an AD. It went off the Romanian or Gregorian calendar, and it used to be called something else. It was like. I don't remember, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah, no, it always confused me because I thought it was before Christ and after death is what I was told.
Yeah, no, that's what. Yeah, before Domini.
So
and after Domini.
I was like, what about all the years he was alive? Is that just not in history?
Well, the thing is that wasn't changed until centuries after, and it was before that. It was actually recorded in dynasties.
Ooh,
it was really interesting. Anyway, the point is.
What's the point?
What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, 28. So you're 28. So we lived in that time where things transition. And so, oh, my God. Let me go back here. My indictment of social media.
Let's take it from the top.
So the reason that, one of the big things is, and this is from our perspective, what they talk a lot about is like children coming into this world. There's no real moderation. You know, kids were able to avoid they didn't have any way to look at YouTube because parents wouldn't, but now there's YouTube Kids. And so they're getting the same ads, they're getting the same algorithm that looks at their choosing behavior and then gives them all these videos that are relevant to their taste. So even kids are being programmed now for that dopamine squirt very, very early on.
Yeah.
And I've been in my clinical practice as a behavior specialist. I've been asked by multiple families, should we give our 2 or 3 year old a tablet? Like, what do you think about that? And there is not enough research right now that is being done on the long-term effects of that. But what I always tell them from a behavioral perspective is that what you're essentially giving them is a stimulus that provides continuous high density, high magnitude reinforcement. And there's really nothing else like that on this planet that just not that I can think of. Like, what else gives you, like, there's no latency. You touch it, it's on. There's audio, visual, sound. There's everything you want immediately. That's almost like rewiring your brain to think that the world operates.
Yeah, the only other thing like that's hard drugs.
Exactly, the cheat codes of life.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like a hack, which is kind of what they refer to it as in a lot of these documentaries.
Hack.
That's the name of the documentary.
Don't.
And they talk about that where they're really, they're hacking into our biology to exploit that vulnerability of what in another book I'm reading by Roman Gelpin, which I can't remember the title of, but it's about the pleasure unconscious, talking about how we are driven by this unconscious below the threshold that's always seeking pleasure, and to manipulate that for economic, capitalistic, for whatever gains. I mean, that's kind of the name of the business, is to make it. And that's what they talk about, is that in Facebook, like they said, whenever you pull down the top and it like refreshes, they create an algorithm where it always shows you something new. Always.
Really?
Yes, and the word they use is, which is true from the industry, is positive intermittent reinforcement, which means that, which to me, I think that's more of a continuous schedule of reinforcement, because if every time you pull down, it's something new. That is a 1-for-1 every time. That's what we call a fixed ratio of 1. That's a continuous schedule, but they call it a positive and intermittent schedule, which means that every few times you do it, and it's probably variable, it's not going to be fixed, you get a new thing, which is a surge of dopamine. And so which is the same principle that's applied to slot machines and casinos. So that's one thing, not to mention the data mining and that it's solding, and that, in the Great Hack, they sold, they worked with Cambridge Analytica that has destabilized, which actually Cambridge Analytica has gone out of business now because they were, like the documentary.
Is that dude in prison?
I think so. You mean the main guy? I can't remember his name. I don't remember if he's in prison or not. He probably should be, because he was a crooked man. He was an entrepreneur that basically, when all the chips fell down, he was like, "Look, we were just doing business. Like, we were just doing business." And they were like, "Yeah, but can't you see how like it affected?" And
yeah, no, I could definitely see how it's morally wrong, but I don't think you could lock someone up for doing something that wasn't a crime when they did it.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
I mean, definitely, it was morally terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that he won the election for Trump.
Yeah, no, that's what the documentary is about. Is that they looked at the data at swing states, and they mined and they created the Ocean personality test, and then based on all these different people, they started looking at the habits from all the data that Facebook collects. And I think and Facebook denies that it gave them any data or anything. And Mark Zuckerberg, and they said that they may have, but he's not aware of it, and all this, and that's all in the documentary. But that strange robot of a man. But they sold him, and so they went to the swing states, and using that polling data, they started blasting which was paid for by the Trump campaign and everything else, the conservative think tanks that backed it, and all the they started blasting conservative, red
propaganda.
Yeah, basically propaganda, and all those people, and took the people that were in those swing states and basically polarized them to, the left or the right, which in this case was the right, and that was helpful. And they literally like celebrated, and there's emails you see in there from the top people that are like, "We did it, we won the election," or and when you talk about it, and they've also done that overseas, they've also compromised elections. Cambridge Analytica was sought out by different politicians in different countries, and they used the same technology they did here in other countries, and it had the same results. It destabilized. They created this propaganda based on what they thought the sensitive group of people was, and they exploited it. And that's happened before in history, but not as efficiently as it is now.
Nothing's as efficient as it is now.
No, and I mean that's kind of terrifying. Like that's kind of terrifying. And you could always, people are like, "Well, I'm not, I can't be bought and sold like that. I'm a thinking, conscious adult." But
no.
But I mean, the other thing that comes up in one of the documentaries is private Facebook groups, which are echo chambers for people who can believe anything by the moderator. So if you take a private Facebook group, which is like thousands of members in some cases, and the moderator is actually somebody who is a troll or somebody who wants to put propaganda out there for
flat earther.
That's a great example. They will blast it out without any research, without anything in this group of people, and because of simply other people seeing other people, and it becomes reality because other people are saying it, and it becomes part of the conversation, that becomes real. And then they talk, and then they go spread it to everyone else, and so it becomes these large, vulnerable echo chambers of misinformation. And that's another concerning thing.
Yeah. But I mean, that's still freedom of speech, so you can't take that away.
No, it's true. I mean, I think the big thing now, which we're veering heavily into like socio-political conversation, but about how Facebook and Twitter are now putting like truth, verificators on posts by different people. So, and I don't know, I know they have taken things down by different high level politicians and things, but I know that some of those are, very incendiary speech and things like that. And some people are upset about that. And I can see that. However, I do like the idea of putting that verifier on there. So it's like, they're not taking it down, but they're saying like, there is no evidence to support this. Just so you know, don't blast this to millions of people.
Are you sure you want to read this bullshit?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's genius. I think that's an amazing way to still maintain the First Amendment as well as,
That's about their only option right now, honestly, because you can't just delete it, or that is violating the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So.
And and so but all of this, we could talk about, one of the reasons before I get into like my final kind of thing, which we have time, is, the reason that I stopped, I kind of left there. And it all I'm going to kind of put it all together because it kind of happened within the same amount of time. So, I've been growing very dissatisfied with Facebook because of the artificiality of it, the fact that it just seemed like the genuine relationships were on there. What they're called now is parasocial relationships. Para meaning almost or kind of, they're not real. They're pseudo relationships. And so started feeling that way. And then I was on Imager, which is the sister site to Reddit, which Reddit is where the posts are, and Imager is where the pictures are stored from the post, and vice versa. So I used to be on Imager a lot, and I would look at memes, and I'd actually get my news from there. Now I get my news from independent stuff and different apps and stuff for local and everything, but I would look at there, and there would always be these really attractive people, like really attractive men, really attractive women, and they seemed, unreal in their beauty standard, and I would just compare that to my life, and I would be like, I have a high forehead, I have this weird biology, I have a big belly, I have all these things, and like it's like I can never meet that standard, and for some reason, any rational human being would be like, well, that's just their job, that's the way they work, but for me, it became this, like everyone does, like a comparison. Like, why am I not like that? Like, why can't I have that? Like, that's so unfair that there's all and it just seemed endless. Like, it seemed like there was just an endless amount of these. And so it made me unhappy. It made me depressed. It made me feel terrible. And I started, and that kind of seeped into my unconscious where I was comparing myself. So when I finally realized that was happening, I immediately deleted Imager and I deleted Reddit. And, that was about the time my buddy, who's my roommate now, several years ago, was like, well, I'm going off Facebook because it's bad for you, and it's, like X and Y, all the things we're talking about now. And I did it too, and then I finally was like, you know what, I'm ready. And I think, that kind of goes into the final part for me, which is that it creates there's a lot of good. Obviously, I'm not against globalization, not against the world. I think that's amazing. Everyone needs to be connected. We are connected with people in ways that we've never been historically. We know what's going on the other side of the world. There's no, I understandably, ostensibly there's no propaganda, like they did in the 60s, like, oh, what's going on over there, but they're bad people and they do this and that. But now it's like, you can just see what a day in the life of Japan looks like. You can see what a day in the life of Africa looks like because of all the technology we have. That's incredible. That nowhere in human history has that ever happened.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that for what research is starting to show and what I have seen firsthand, what I've experienced is that these parasocial relationships, for most of us, not like the grandparents looking on grandparents, the grandparents looking, parents looking at their kids, and we haven't even talked about like its effect on teenagers and like how toxic and the bullying and like how the comparisons and like there's actually something they talk about in the documentary. Now they don't substantiate it, so I don't know how many people actually, they call it a disorder called Snapchat dysphoria. What? And it's where people go to plastic surgeons to have their faces designed to look like Snapchat filters.
What?
Because that is how they have learned, that is how they see their beauty as. That is whenever they see this Snapchat filter and everyone posts, and there's a great vignette, that's one of the only dramatizations on there I like, is a girl posts a picture of herself with a Snapchat filter, and she like takes a picture of herself and looks at it for like a few seconds, and then was gonna post it, but then doesn't, and then puts a filter on it, and then post it. And then everyone's like, oh, looking good, girl. Oh my God, you look so pretty. And like, think about that. Think about what that tells people. Think about how that tells us. Like, we are only good if we're modified. We're only good if we have this unrealistic kind of pen brushing, airbrushing over ourselves in reality. And so anyway, I don't know how many people actually go do that, but that was one of the things.
That's actually a disorder.
Yeah. The dysmorphia.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is that people want to get their faces
to look like Snapchat filters.
Yep, because that is what they equate to beauty. That is where they are relating to the world. That is how people are relating to them, and they relate to themselves. Now, I don't want to make a big deal of that because I really don't know how. I mean, surely that can't be like millions of people, but it's enough to get in the heads of people, and if it's enough to get in the heads of, someone who feels more educated or has had that, like, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah,
and so, yeah, for me, it's really just, I don't even I have all the people that I want on my phone and I text them and call them, as like, I don't know when anything happens, like, because the people that I really care and love about, and not all the ancillary thousands of people that are, just got a new job, just got a new girl, just, bought a new, it's like, okay, that's cool, that's great for you, I'm so happy for you, but like your reality doesn't need to encroach in my reality because it ultimately has no. And that's another thing they talk about is like we are now living in. Have you seen the Truman Show? The movie?
I haven't seen it, but I know. Yeah, I've seen like half of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the movie. How did you only see half?
What
of
happens
it?
at the end? I don't know.
He gets
No,
out.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I know. No, I don't know. I think I watched it in and out one time with someone.
So the Truman Show, for those of you, I think it came out in like the 80s or 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and it has Jim Carrey in it, in a more sobering, honest. He's still silly, but he's much more plays the straight man in that movie. It's a movie where he's basically in a fake world, like where he's behind a camera, and everything is designed around him. And every like people, like there's like a shot like midway through the movie where everyone is like walking on the street and everything's frozen. And then someone's like, here he comes, or he's coming. And then everyone starts moving right before he comes around the corner. And so it really is about like that existential reality about what's real and what's not and what's fabricated. And everyone watches, and there's people that have grown up with him. Like he grew up in this town. He was born there. And, his mom and dad, I don't know if they're real or fake. I don't remember. It's been several years. But basically the concept is that everything is designed. And eventually he gets out at the end of the movie and he, sees the real world and everything. But, it's kind of like that. They talk about how every single human being now, with all the crazy advertisements and the algorithms behind it all that drive what you do, what you like, what to advertise to you, how do you get you to buy, how to get your engagement in terms of looking at something on the screen for a certain amount of time. All of that is stuff that advertisers would kill for in the 50s and 40s before this time. But now it's just the next level up. All of this stuff... what was I going to say? God, I get like deep into this rant and then I forget. Anyway, every single human being who has a smartphone is now living in their own tailored version of that show.
Yeah.
Like every single, like you and I who could see eye to eye on so many things, we could have, which we do, like look at our YouTube search, like look at the recommended videos. Like mine is like death metal and After Effects tutorials, and yours are bow hunting and
like Caesar doing shit.
You see, ancient empires,
ancient war.
Good on
tactics.
you. Good on you. But it's like all of that is like it's algorithm driven. There's not a human being behind it that's like, oh, it's like we created the algorithms and they are designing our realities for us. And I mean, I don't want that to sound as crazy because I think the truth is more mundane than that. Like it's just we're being shown things that we think we would like. But another crazy thing is that like in Google, they talk about how if you search like global warming is, instead of just getting like, it autofills because that's what Google does to, I guess that's another, accessibility feature and to get you where you want to go. That, if you, depending on what state you're in, it will say is a hoax. If you're in a state where a lot of people, or it's more conservative and more people are, like that climate change deniers, things like that. But if you're in like a more progressive city or anything else, it'll say like is destroying the world and nature. And all of that is like, and of course you can go into that knowing what you want to search, but like the fact that you could do that and this complete algorithm of a process can take you to a completely contrived reality, a situation where you're being shown things that maybe you didn't even know existed that you wanted to see, or that send you further down the rabbit hole of your own, disbelief or disillusion. I mean, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of scary.
It's really cool though. At the same time,
honestly. It is really cool
because I mean, the goal in that search engine when you type something in is to give you like the first thing should theoretically be what you were thinking of.
Yes.
And if I didn't know it did that, like based on your location, it'll give you searches based on who's around you. I mean, it's more likely that top thing's going to be what they tell you based on who's around.
Well, and I think as we know that, and it's well, and I agree with you. It's cool because a lot of it's so funny because in there they talk about in one of the documentaries, The Social Dilemma, they talk about how when we in the 80s, 90s we had Terminator movies and we're like, oh, this is what'll happen when AI rules the world, but AI is already ruling everything. Like,
AI is ruling everything. We're just in charge of it right now.
Yeah, exactly. And people are like, oh, in that future, that's what it'll be like. But the future is so much more mundane. Like the reality is so much more mundane. Like we already are, governed by those AI entities and algorithms, but they just tell us when we should buy eggs or what, what dress we should like or what television show we should like. And, of course, I'm reading George Orwell's 1984.
Of course.
And I'm almost through it. By the way, if you guys have not had a chance to read that, highly recommend. Any of his other books are great too, but this one particularly right now
It's
is really
very
good.
relevant.
It's very relevant. But I mean, and I'm not saying that we're living in like a dictatorship state or a communist state where if we don't do these certain things that we will be prosecuted, will disappear and stuff. But at the
We're
same
a lot closer
time,
than we were when it was written.
yeah, well, it's funny because he wrote in like 1957, 47 or 49 or in the 50s, and it's kind of scary. But at the same time, we don't have a regime, although we kind of that if all things being equal, maybe would push for that. But we still have that choice, and we have the ability. But we're getting closer to that point where we are not governing our own credit. We are not being driven by our critical and analytical thinking skills. We're not choosing what's good for us. We are being told, "Hey, you'll probably like this," and you're like, "Yeah, I guess I do." And I think in like concept, that's not bad. Like you said, there is a value to that. Like, I don't know what I like. Like when I go to YouTube, I can type in bands like this band, and it'll show me all these bands that are very similar to the metal group. Foods like this. A hairstylist in my area that are similar to this style. That's all very good. That's all very adaptive technology. But you can see how if you turn the dial up on that, like how it's like, oh, don't go here, do this one. Everyone likes this one. You can see. And I'm not the guy that's saying, I don't believe that we're headed, we're going that way. But what I will say is that if you're unaware of those factors, I mean, it's good to be, and I think that's what we're moving to. In what I was going to say when you said that about the Google search is I saw an article, I think it was on NPR yesterday or the day before, saying that Google has elected to turn off its autofill up until the election.
What?
Yeah, because they don't want people being swayed by that. Like they want the democratic process and everything to be, they don't want people to be like, should I vote for? And it fills in a candidate based on where you live. They want it to be, they want it to be open to say like, look, we're as hands off. We want this to be as open as possible.
Like they're talking about turning it off completely, or just for like political things.
I don't know. I mean, the article made it sound like it was completely, but I assume it's just for political or for that purpose.
Yeah.
So that people can't be like Trump is, and then if you're living in a red state, it'll be like the
Good.
Messiah and the best man, and he's gonna come and kiss your children.
Jesus.
And then if you're in the blue states, it's gonna further demonize them. But it's I think that's a good move for a tech company to do, because that shows like the side point of all this that is the ethics that's missing. That's like, we have one of the great examples they have is like, we got in a car, they're like, oh, this vehicle can go like 60 miles like an hour, up to like rev 0 to 100 120, and that's so cool and it's great, look at how flashy it is, but there's no seat belts installed, there's no regulator. And that's what they're talking about. We have all this incredible technology, and we're just now getting to the point, because of the vast expansion of all this and the architecture of it has just grown exponentially. We're now being like, oh shit, like we do not know like how to manage this. Like we there should be so many things that are in place to filter out these, that because we really are not in control in a lot of this, especially as how it plays on human behavior.
Because I think a lot of these algorithms and things started off as just, it was cool things people were doing to try to start their business or whatever. But now it's, like you said, way more into manipulating people. And like, there are no laws or anything. And the lawmakers, the people that are going to make these laws, like when they have like Zuckerberg and stuff, they don't even know what they're talking about. Have you seen those? Yep. It's terrible. They had like the CEO of Google like trying to explain how email works or something to the Senate, and it was ridiculous. So
I agree with that. And the thing that's interesting is the big tech giant. Well, they're more like cell phone companies and everything else, but the legislation and like the regulation they've pushed for are to buy and sell chunks of the internet. Do you remember that? Like all the props that were like, we're gonna. Like there were so many.
You're talking about net neutrality?
Yes, net neutrality, and how they wanted to section that off and give certain people premium internet, blah, blah, blah. And right now it's just like in terms of speed, but they're talking about like bandwidth and like how much you can get and how fast it is, not in terms of the upfront data, but how much content. And the argument then goes to what kind of content. What if a Verizon, or AT&T or whatever says, well, we don't want you to see our actual numbers. We don't want you to be able to Google like on our website, the bandwidth that you're buying through us. We don't want you to see anything bad about us. That's the argument and how that goes. But those are really like the only big things that are going on, is just how to carve out more money for people that already have money.
Yeah.
And there's a documentary I watched before that called Capital. That's a whole other podcast talk, and it's about how wealth is accumulated and how it stays.
Okay.
We don't have to talk about that. So, yeah, it's it's a lot, and I think that for me, like I think for people like us in our generation, who I guess are like what generation are we in? Like, I was born in '88, like, and you were born in the early '90s. Like, are we generation like Y or Z?
Oh, we're the cool kid generation.
Yeah, we, with K's for C's.
Yeah,
cool
kids.
And the O's have sunglasses. In the middle of
with a big smiley face under it.
Cool kids.
That's our generation.
That's us, baby. I think see that a little bit easier because we lived in a time without all that stuff. We lived in a time where Facebook was ad free. We lived in a time where things were not monetized yet. All of our data, all of the large data, the data mining, all of the things that human behavior, the artifacts of that's left behind, the cookies and everything. And I mean that like metaphorically as well as literally, like that just there wasn't a market. There wasn't a business for that yet. And now, like literally you cannot go to Twitter, you cannot go to Instagram, you cannot go to anything without being manipulated subtly in some way. Look at this ad. Look at this. Look at what this person said. Try this. This person recently got on this app. You should get on it too. Mm-hmm. It's all these ways that affect human behavior in a way that's very subtle. And again, the argument like that you made, I think, which is very fair, which is that the core design behind this is to improve our lives and to give us access to things we didn't know. But if you dig a little bit deeper and you see the way that it's been used to destabilize world economies and world systems in the way that, it's an algorithm that's really not governed in a large part by the creators in a way that, they could never do themselves. It kind of goes, all of that, is scary to me. And the part about the human behavior and the effect it has on our consciousness and our perceptions of ourselves and our autonomy was enough to push me away. Mm-hmm. And I think one of you guys made a comment earlier. I was talking to someone about this earlier, and they said that I was still on, it was either Reddit or something, or I used an app for something, and they're like, well, see, you're still addicted. And I was like, well, because, I do have a smartphone. I've thought a lot about not using a smartphone, but I don't know how to get anywhere. So I need my GPS app.
Yeah.
And, which is funny for a city I've been in for 13 years in Louisville, Kentucky. But, I really just use it for honestly, I use it for Google searches, for my email, and then looking at video game news and news. Like, that's it. Like, I don't really have any other purpose, other than that mysterious thing that we all do on our phones. The one.
The one where you call people.
Yeah, we'll say that. I don't really use it for a lot, and that to me is enough.
Yeah, I mean, I use Snapchat a lot, but that's just like to communicate with. I don't like post anything on my story ever. I just communicate with people like one-on-one. I mean, same thing I could do through like text messages, but.
Well, and I mean, the kind of. Exactly. And that type of communication still exists. Like we can still text each other, we can still call each other. And that's like the rudiments that everything, before the computers and everything started being embedded on top of that, or that being embedded within the computers of the smartphones. But, the thing about, I have this great book by an author, and I think we've talked about it before. I haven't read it yet, but it's called, oh no, I can't remember what it's called.
That's an interesting title for this topic.
I know. But what the book is about is this British author, kind of like he interviews all these. Hold on, you know what? I'm just gonna look it up real quick.
All right.
Because I think it's really important. It's Chasing the Scream author. Johann Hari. Oh, it is called Chasing the Scream. No. It's there was another book that he had. Sorry. Anyway, this guy wrote a book, and it basically he's an English author, and he interviewed all these people in England, and men and women and everyone. And basically what he found was like, it's something like 34 to 50%, or 35 to 50% of the population said that they felt isolated, they felt alone, they felt depressed, they didn't feel connected to anybody. And this is coming in an age where there is unbridled, unhistoric levels of connectivity. Like, we are more connected. And so he went on a world-spanning trip to talk to all these different people and all these different places to try to figure out where that depression comes from, like why. And I watched his TED Talk where he talked about the concepts and the thesis of his book, and how the main thing is that the values that we have now elevated, have changed a lot. What he calls junk values. We want to know what other people think about us. We want to know, what other people's lives look like. All these things, and material wealth. The materialism of, all of that has been elevated. And the other thing is that we have all these parasocial relationships that do not light up our brains and give us the fulfillment that an actual face-to-face relationship has anymore. And he says that, because of that, we are now less happy or more depressed than we've ever been before.
Do you think that also has to do with, like, on social media, if you go on there, you're tricking your brain into thinking you are communicating with people and you are, like, in a group, but you're still not getting, like, the actual fulfillment your brain evolved to have? So you don't actually, like, go out and seek it out because you, on the surface, you feel like you got what you wanted, but you actually weren't satisfied.
Yeah, and actually that is a great point, because it's a neuroscientific principle, and obviously I don't know enough about that, but basically there's a great book called The Willpower Instinct, and in there the author talks about how, because I have a book on that.
I know.
And she talks about how so for example, let's say you want to lose weight, you want to go to the gym. So you thinking about going to the gym and doing that exercise releases a chemical to your brain that feels good as though you had already done it. So basically, by thinking about doing things, we are rewarding ourselves before the task is actually done. And that's an automatic process. And so that's something we have to combat. Like when we think about it, we're like, well, I thought about it. And like the way that our body responds gives us the same reaction as though we had done it. And so like in the same way, I think you're right. Like people are like, oh, I wonder what Bob's up to. Oh, I talked to Bob. I liked his picture. I got that. So, but I think that like we talked about that creates a diet reality that creates a watered down, an actual facsimile of a real genuine interaction where you are left with something. That person just sees a notification that, that again plays into that addictive cycle. Oh, I got a new, and also they talk about in the movie how the creation of the notifications is an entirely designed process to get you to come back to it. That just perpetuates the kind of, the insular, that everyone's isolated even though we all live, and that's because we don't live in tribes anymore. We live in these cities and all these homes that, in other countries, dozens of people live in, and we only have, one person living in those homes. And, the reality and the modernization has just created these divides.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry this episode isn't very funny. I just realized that.
Dude, I'd like to try to live in a tribe.
Yeah. You got to be careful. Tribes tend to adhere to one set of values and beliefs.
I'd like to live in a non-religious tribe.
Okay.
Like a tribe that knows what's going on. Like a hippie tribe, but that eats meat. I can't do that vegetable stuff.
The proto-proteins.
Yeah. I'll be a hippie hunter.
The Prometheans. A hippie hunter. I'm really sorry I have to take your life, Mr. Deer, but your life-sustaining meat will continue the cycle of life.
I'd like to try. I think it would be like, it wouldn't necessarily be fun, what we consider fun, but like I think after like a month you'd find you way more fulfilled. Actually.
Yep.
From the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, you're actually working on staying alive rather than, posting stuff on social media.
Yeah, well, and I think that going the full tribal route and going like into that way is definitely one way to do it. But I think there's another way is just being, limiting the amount of use, like maybe moderation.
Oh, definitely. I'm not saying that's what needs to happen. I'm just saying it'd be interesting I'd do it for a few months.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that people have done that. Like maybe they're just not as big because people can't imagine it. But I'm sure people have, like I can see how maybe not gone and do the tribal thing, but they've gone off the grid. Like people live off the grid, in all kinds of states now. They have solar and they collect water and they, just know the people they know and they have, maybe a dial phone or something. I assume they have some level or modicum of digital interaction and interface, but.
See, like the Amish people, but just like without the God stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, without the fire and brimstone Baptist. But I think that's a great idea. I would love that. And I think the other side, like I can see the argument from the other side being like, well, what should we do instead? And like honestly, like I get along just fine without Facebook. Like I talk to all my friends and they notify me and I make events on my Google Calendar on my phone, and Google obviously takes data, but I think that advertisers have always been accruing information on their consumers, but not just in this way that they do now. But I think that's a price to pay. In the beginning of The Great Hack, he talks about all the guy who's trying to get his data back from Facebook. He talks about all the permissions he has to assign on. Like, oh, this app needs my microphone permission. Oh, this app needs access to my photos. It's like, why? Like, what is this app? And again, I'm not a end of the world. Like, oh, it's a big. I don't think that at all. But I'm just saying, like, the level of intrusion they have on your personal life as a trade-off to using this unparalleled technology, I guess that that the scales are slowly starting to tip in the other direction.
Yeah, I think eventually there's going to be laws made about it and stuff, but right now it's just the Wild West.
It is exactly. That's a great way to put it. It is the wild bucking bronco west. And I think that we've been it has been nothing but beneficial, but I think we have several 1,000-year-old brains that are driven to search for that sweet secretion of dopamine. And it's kind of like, I've been watching several of the documentaries about like weight loss and weight gain and dieting, and it's the same thing. Like people like food companies will say, well, that's our product. Like the information's out there. You're adults. Monitor your use.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that I understand where you're coming from, but also not everyone has that information. It's not given in readily understandable data bits. And 3, you're playing on human behavior. You're playing on literal neurological circuitry and biological circuitry that has not changed in thousands of years. And this is in a saturation and an intensity in a dosage that we have never had access to before.
And I mean, it's really easy to point your finger at like those CEOs and be like, "That's shitty that you're doing that because that's unethical," which it is. But at the same time, like, this is capitalist America. That's what you're literally told to do to get ahead. I mean, that's what our entire country's founded on. So you can't really be pissy with the CEO because they're trying to get ahead in life.
Yeah, they're just slinging it. Well, and again, and that's what's so funny to me is whenever you see those people talking about their products, in court and everything else, is that they have completely divorced the responsibility of the company that they lead from the product. Like they're like, well, but that's not what its intention is. Yeah. And it's like when I watched a documentary about the alt-right, you have individuals that are just espousing this hatred, this ethnocentric rage and this hate speech. And then they say, when people do something in the name of that, they're like, well, but that's not what I wanted. It's like, yeah, but can't you see the downstream effects of the logic and the stance you're taking? It's like that same thing. Like, you are responsible for that, not directly, but you're the leader of the company. When you're the leader, no, it doesn't matter. Like we've talked about before on leadership, you're responsible. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you are the one, like Jocko Willink talks about, like, it's you. So man up. Like, if you don't know the effects, then that's on you. So I think that's all I got.
Yeah.
I mean, I could keep raging on and on, but I mean, I don't think that
I don't think it's going to be productive anymore.
No, I think that I gave enough, I think, I think I said enough about with the history and how I feel about it in the and again, I think I don't know what the good version of that is. Like, I don't know how you make a Facebook where it's not addictive. Like, maybe when it first came out, strip all the ads. I don't know how they're going to get the money that they had before.
The thing is, you can't do that, or another social media will pop up that is addictive by design, and it'll just take it over. So until it's regulated, that's just the way it's going to be.
That is an excellent point. And I think that anytime anyone talks about regulating the internet or digital media, people freak out. But in this case, with, we talked a little bit about, and I kind of mentioned at the very beginning, but didn't go into the Ghost of Sugarland. You have instances where people, you have millions of people that have accessed this technology. And if millions of people, you have millions of experiences, you have millions of consciousnesses, you have all these, and you don't know how every single person's going to react. You have people that are maybe primed to be like people who feel isolated, people who don't have a strong sense of values, people who feel maybe conviction but don't know where it comes from, people don't have any way of relating. Then they find radicalization documentation on the internet. They find these people that tell them, hey, we know what you're feeling, come with us and we'll take you and we'll show you how to get back at those people. We'll show you that the way you've been feeling is actually accurate and everyone who feels wrong is actually wrong, and here's what you can do. I mean, that documentary is about the radicalization of a guy from Texas, and all these, there's just so much that needs to be, like you said, there's just not enough regulation. I know that's the big R word is really scary for a lot of people, on both sides of the aisle, left or right. But I think in this case, like, I think it's long overdue and I know that we're not the first people to talk about this.
I mean, but then on the other side of that, if you start regulating the internet because some people get addicted and can't handle it, then what's next? You're gonna just start regulating, like, if someone's eating too much sugar, you're gonna come in and take all their food away. I mean,
they did that. They actually did that in. There was a documentary, and they did that in. It was either in Africa or Australia or something. They went in this town, like this company set up shop, and they started having all this influx of all these sugary foods, and so. I read it on NPR. I don't remember exactly where it was, but they basically took all the sugary products, and if until you're 18 years old, you can't buy them.
Yeah, I would support
and that's
that,
because
honestly.
of the obesity rates.
Yeah.
Like they were so it's called hard paternalism on part of the government, but like they came in and they're like, you know what, we created this problem, or this is a problem. We're going to literally limit it until because kids would go to the store and buy like bunches of sodas and chips, and that would be their meal. And
you should have to get a sugar license to buy sugar, like a gun license. I think that's a good idea.
Sugar license.
Yeah, and after you get like some nutrition education, because I'd say 80% of America has no idea how bad sugar is. Everyone knows sugar's bad, but they don't know like how much it's killing you.
So I recently watched That Sugar film by an Aussie. I don't remember his name, but it's hilarious. He's so funny, and he basically eats. Anyway, that's a whole other documentary.
Yeah, we'll do that one.
But anyway, there's what is there any information you want to give out to people? Any documentaries or anything they can educate themselves about?
About social media?
No, about sugar.
No, we'll do a different podcast about that.
That's fair.
I got a lot. I could talk about nutrition for hours.
Ooh, okay. I smell what you're cooking.
It's not sugar.
It's beets.
Steak.
So yeah, I strongly recommend watching The Great Hack on Netflix and The Social Dilemma. Both of those provide excellent information, except for the narrative dramatization in The Social Dilemma, which I could do without, which I said at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately it's up to you. I have nothing but, I have no ill will or contempt for anyone who uses social media. I just find that my life is so much more meaningful and each day is much more valuable when I'm not constantly bombarded with manipulating ads and, people, just saying meaningless human experiential trivialities on Facebook that, before no one would have ever communicated,
Yeah.
Which maybe I'm being a pretentious asshole. Maybe I'm, neurotic in that way, but I think, it's one thing to go to somebody and be like, hey, I went to the store today. And you're like, oh, cool. What did you get? How did it go? And they're like, oh man, I saw this weird guy there. That's a genuine reaction rather than being like, went to the store today, winky face, LOL. It's like, what do you want? What do you want from me? What do you put that out there? What do you want from me? So I'm a little bit neurotic about it, but
just gotta find what works for you.
I think I'm just gonna like have people write letters and dig a hole and put them in my yard, and then there'll be a letter hole exchange.
You got a whole box for that in front of your yard.
It's too modern, Kyle. It's too
right.
modern. The mailbox is too modern.
Well, all that being said, we are going to advertise on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah, full disclosure, we're going to have to bite the bullet and try to get the market out there.
Yeah, we're really looking for that subscriber number 17.
Oh, if you can be our 17th subscriber. And also, we have some merchandise in the works. In the very, very early.
As in, we thought about it, and
I pulled up Illustrator and we did a mock-up.
Yeah, very early in the
very
works.
early. I'm not. It's. I would say that it's still a gleam in the daddy in both of our mutual daddy's eyes. We're
eyes.
We're the daddies.
Okay. All right.
Okay. You didn't expect to become a father today, did you?
No, not today. It's a big day.
Well, we'll do it together, babe. So yeah, any final thoughts on social media?
No, I gave a lot of thoughts.
You did. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I did too. I feel drained, but sustained.
Oh, drained but sustained.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be your new motto?
That's the title on my sex tape. Drained but sustained. Thank you guys so much for joining and listening as always. If you liked what you heard, please drop us a comment, leave a subscribe.
Yeah. And drink water and meditate.
That's right. Hydrate and meditate, baby.
Yeah.
You heard it from himself, the man, the big Kyle himself. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.